So Ken, is there anything you want to add? Anything that you kind of forgot about this morning or anything that you'd like to finish up with? Wait, you're muted. Yeah, you'll have to, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I did check out the Firefox website. I'm not sure if they have a place to repository per se. They do a lot of Appalachian Mountain folklore stuff. But it's a neat site anyway, worth checking out.
Cool.
So
Yeah, we'll definitely link to it. That's for sure.
yeah. No, I'm willing to answer any questions anybody's thought of or something, but otherwise I'm ready to take a walk.
Me too. Hi, Christine. I'm glad you're here. I know you had to kind of come and go this morning a little bit, but if there's anything you want to interject or ask, this is a good time you can do that. You'll have to unmute yourself if you want
to. No, sorry, I've been out with kids, so it's been spotty coverage, but I'm excited.
Well, good. Did you get a chance to watch much this morning, or were you kind of in and out?
I did. I think I lost you guys right before you did your walk, but I did my own walk with the kiddo. We got it in.
Oh, good. That's great. So, Joy, that might be helpful. Christine's got little ones, about the same ages as yours, really, maybe a little bit younger, but might be nice to include how you meander with children in the woods, and just any helpful hints or ideas, or that could be real helpful too.
Awesome.
So we'll give it another couple minutes. It's just right at 1 o'clock. I know there were a number of people who signed up and they were going to come this afternoon. I'm just showing some of my nature pictures, just kind of scrolling through those a little bit. Some are native places. Obviously, those tulips are not, but they were sure gorgeous when I took pictures. And that was out at Johnson County Community College a few years back. And that was where I split apart a whole begonia plant. I think that was Texas.
Bluebonnet.
Bluebonnet. And I don't know what the pink blooms. That's a blue-eyed grass from my backyard, my favorite plant of all time. It's in the iris family, but boy, it's so sweet.
It's beautiful.
And that was a big rock with a native garden in the streamway. That's my 90-foot tree. Christine, that's the one that's in my basement, but it's in a summertime picture. It's the same tree. That was another native restoration that we did. And that one too. Well, we lost Christine.
The Luna moths might be showing up here in another week or two.
Oh, yeah?
There we go.
I had an experience with when we had windows that opened out like this, and you wind them out and you wind them back. And I was talking to somebody and closing the window, and I closed a Luna moth right in the crease of the window. I was so heartbroken. I just couldn't believe I'd done that. They're like my favorite. Well, this might not be that big a group, which is actually okay. I have it recording. And I think that whatever comes off the top of your head, Christine or Joy, as you walk through, it'll be recorded and we'll have that available for people afterwards. So is that all right with you?
That is just fine.
Okay, good. And Christine, if you have anything you want to butt in, you get to, it's like kind of a private tour. And so you can ask whatever questions or make whatever comments come up. So just as kind of a little introduction here, this is kind of the second half of the Resilient Activists Climate Conversations, which is a monthly meeting that we have. And now we've lost Ken. This is going to be interesting. And this is our special Earth Day one, although we're a couple of days late, but just a way to really connect to nature from the perspective from a couple people, Ken Lastman from the Lawrence area and Joy Ellsworth in the Kansas City, Missouri area, just to see how people who really are connected to nature, how they experience it, and how they intentionally set aside time and place and space to go and make time in nature happen. So anyway, so thank you, Joy, for doing this. I appreciate it. Christine's coverage is spotty. I just got a text from her, and I know that Ken's is, we lost him earlier this morning on his DSL line. So it may just be you and me, Joy. So take it.
Well, it may be just you and me right now, but I tell you, things like this tend to be found roundabout ways that are unpredictable. And the number of views that we've had on our Facebook videos where we go out and show what our volunteers are doing, or show a cool edible that we found or something. It doesn't matter at the time, you know, how many people are experiencing it. The fact that the content is available later on is the most important thing for those who have reached out to us afterward and said, hey, I was in a low moment. I really needed to connect with the world from, you know, my office when I was just like, you know, whatever the situation was for the people, they reach out and they say that it is valuable. And so it's really nice to hear.
Yeah, that's the way I feel. I just know, you know, when I used to teach pranayama and meditation classes, and there'd only be one or two people that came, there was this sense that over time, whoever was ready to hear it, they're the ones that showed up, right? You know, that whole, when you're ready for a particular teacher, the teacher will show up. And so that's the way I feel. And I know we'll have these available, and there will be lots more people watching them once we get them posted up on the site. So thanks. So go ahead. I want to know about your necklace first.
Oh, okay. So this necklace is a tree of life. My husband found it and bought it for me. And I'm not really a jewelry kind of person, but it's the one thing that I can wear even when I'm like in business meetings or something and I feel like I need to be closer to nature. I just kind of grab it. So, yeah. Nature is my comfort toy. Actually, before I get started, Sammy, I wanted to know if people are watching this video and they'd like to reach out or they'd like to connect to more meetings where supportive people are going to be together, talking about, you know, how to move forward in cooperation with nature and feeling like, you know, they're helping the planet rather than hurting it, or all of the resources that you are really amazing at bringing together. How do they connect to that? If you can me asking.
Thank you, dear. So they can connect through the resilientactivist.org, and we do have a Facebook page. And we also publish our events on the Climate Council of Greater Kansas City's citywide event page. And they have an email that goes out once a week with upcoming events through a lot of organizations that they've partnered with. So I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's what we're all about, is whatever people perceive that could be beneficial for them, knowing the benefits of time spent in nature, knowing resilience tools like meditation, yoga, journaling. There's so much that we offer, and we offer that through trauma and resilience training. And so, yeah, thanks so much.
No problem. Okay. And I feel good about starting.
Good.
So just a bit of background. I want to give it a little bit of background about our project here. When we moved to the KC area and we felt, after having lived in the country for a little bit before moving back to KC, we just felt like we were missing something. And so we, as an organization, acquired this 4-acre spot that is in East Kansas City, just south of Swope Park. And we did it so that we could help other people realize how much of a empty spot nature fills in your life, even when you didn't even know it was an empty spot that was there. And so we've been so blown away by how much volunteers that come to our site come away just commenting how remarkably refreshed they feel after working in the forest. And anyway, that was the goal of it, acquiring it. And then, of course, by getting to know the community that lives around the forest, we realized there aren't a lot of walking trails in this area that community members feel safe walking in. And so we decided to take the lead of the community and figure out what would make a walking trail feel safe to them, but also would respect the balance of nature that is already in the spot. And that's what guides this project right now. So I am down at the Foxglove Creek, and that is what I'm sitting right next to here.
So hold on a second, Joy. I'm going to introduce with you. Could you take a minute or two and just introduce Clement Waters, what your mission is, what kinds of projects you do, and just spend a couple minutes on that before you get into really the details of the glory of the place.
Sure. Clement Waters is an organization dedicated to helping everybody figure out how they want to be better stewards of their bodies, their communities, and their planet, because all of it is interconnected. We are interconnected with the planet around us, and we operate out of a love and respect for nature, but also for humanity. And we find there's lots of intersection points where nature and humanity can benefit each other. So that's the gist of what we do. And what was the other part of what you asked me?
So just what do you do at Clement Waters, as a nonprofit and your programs there?
Right. Okay. So our most common way of connecting to people is coordinating volunteer events and having people come to our 4-acre forest spot along the Foxglove Creek. But also, we have introduced people in an urban area to the idea that their lawns outside can be used for more than just grass, and especially in areas that have food insecurity issues, we have helped people create either demonstration gardens that use native and hardy heirloom edible plants to create edible gardens for themselves, or maybe just the first step is giving away a plant and some companion plants that can be planted next to it so they're healthy together. But regardless, we're getting people thinking about their relationship to food that grows around them. And lastly, in the arena of taking care of our bodies, we have recently connected with a modern dance choreographer and recreational therapist who helps us broadcast sessions every Tuesday. I think her time is 6:30 on Tuesdays from a Facebook group that she runs. And she leads people in getting in touch with their bodies and finding what sustainable movements they want to practice with themselves, and helping people get to know the messages that their bodies can send them in a way that brings them to better health. So those are the 3 areas we're focusing on right now: the nature, the community food, and your body.
This is wonderful, Joy. And I will just say, we will have any sources or links that you mention, we will have actual information and links. Once this video is posted, we'll have that information available so people can follow up with that. So,
Excellent.
great.
Okay, so I'm going to mention this at the end as well, but the first information source that I'm going to share is that on the front page of our website, there is a link to a page that we've put together that lists a whole bunch of lesser known parks around the Kansas City area that are especially useful for people who just want to get away without, when I have like a feeling of that they're getting away for a moment without having to book a flight or without having to rent a car or, you know, get a hotel room. It's right here and can bring you some solace before returning back to the real world. And that is linked on our website, which is clementwaters.org, CLEMENT, waters, like many waters, not just one, .org. Okay, I think that's it for right now. Would you like to move on into the, I'm so eager to just start meandering.
Do it. Go.
All right, okay. So what I'm going to do for the next hour and 15 minutes or so is I'm going to kind of wander around this property and notice things. One of the most wonderful things we can do for ourselves is to be present in the place where we are. And if it's a place that has natural features and randomized patterns of sunlight dappling down on our heads, or randomized sounds of birds or a babbling brook, those kinds of experiences actually have a psychosomatic reaction in our bodies and bring us to a greater sense of calm. So we're gonna kind of wander together through this property, and we're gonna notice a couple of things together. Before I do, I want to talk to you about what would it be like if you actually went out to a spot that you hadn't been to before and decided you wanted to try this kind of thing. We should talk about safety first, I think. When we first started working on this trail, the neighbors would come down and they would really be curious about what was going on in the trail, and they'd talk to us on the street side about, oh, what's going on here, and we'd say, well, would you like to come walk the trail? And they'd say no, most times. A couple people would say, well, yeah, maybe, I'm just curious. But the moment they stepped onto the trail underneath the trees, what was a professional demeanor at the street side would turn into a kind of jittery, wide-eyed, looking about for stuff. It was so uncanny, and so I started asking. I said, "Well, are you okay? You look like you're in distress or alarmed or whatever." And the person would say, "Well, actually," one person said, "I'm looking for ropes in the trees." And I thought, "Oh my goodness, why?" And he said, well, it wasn't 50 years ago that people were hanging from these trees. And I thought, oh my goodness. And about 5 minutes later, after going down into the middle of the forest, he was calm and looked up into the trees and said, this is really, really nice. And another time, a woman came in and was concerned, steps into the trail. And when I asked, she said, well, there's a lot of bushes around here. They're really thick. And if somebody jumped out from behind a bush and got me, nobody would come looking for me as a Black woman. And it's an example of things we don't think about safety in the forest. There are people who, for a couple generations, more than a couple, have been told, don't go into the woods. Bad things happen in the woods. And movies, media have kind of perpetuated that myth. So it's not just communities of color, it's actually kind of culture-wide. It's mainstream culture-wide that some people really feel scared going into a place that they can't really see farther than 50 yards. And so before we start, I want to talk about it's okay to be afraid, and you can take some steps to feel safer and be close to nature. And I'm also going to offer that the feelings of caution are actually pretty utilitarian in a natural environment, and it's probably a good thing that you're in touch with that. And those feelings are what you can rely on for your own safety when you are in the middle of nature. If you feel unsafe going into a natural area, I really recommend either taking someone who you trust, or making sure you have a cell phone on you that has reception, or finding a different spot, a different area that may have a similar effect, but might just be an entry level for you. As a person, this is something I don't bring up a lot, but it is relevant to why we do what we do. I am a survivor of an assault in my late teens, and it changed the way I feel about, or that I detect risk situations. So this is why when I would go out into nature, the thought of my own safety sometimes didn't cross my mind. And so I got past that threshold and able to learn about, what nature can do for me. But there are other people who have experienced other traumas in different ways, who have a huge caution about nature. They have fears that they listen to, and that is absolutely valid. So if you're out camping, or you've invited a friend camping or something, and you're one of the people who is comfortable with nature, and you've always been out subsistence camping, or not subsistence, but survivalist camping, and your friend has never been that way, I would like to extend the experience that you're going to have a lot better time with your friend, and your friend's going to have a lot better time getting to know nature if you recognize the fear, and instead of making fun of it, or that can seem like you're keeping the mood light, but for them it's really not keeping the mood light. So be aware that sometimes it's just something that needs to be acknowledged and then treated gently. Yeah, that's all I have to say about safety. Am I missing something?
Well, I just want to say, Joy, this is such an important topic, and we have, the Resilient Activist has our monthly climate conversation, so events just like this, although they're typically just 2 hours, but a couple of months ago we did one on being out in nature and feeling safe in nature. It's really got to be a really difficult conversation for a number of people. And what I want to share is that Joy and I and Ken Lastman, who's on this call and did our morning presentation, along with Amy Sell, who had led our original conversation a couple of months ago, we're going to be writing an article about how to be safe in nature and how to feel really comfortable, different tools and tips and tricks. And what I would like to say is, anyone watching this video who has a story they would like to share, or a particular safety tip, or a particular caution that we could address, so that there's an article that we'll have on our site where everybody can go there and say, oh, I recognize myself in this situation, and oh, here are some things I might do differently, or I might think about, or I might plan for. So thank you for bringing that up. It's really important information.
Excellent. All right. Well, shall we start the meander?
Well, yeah, let's just keep saying yes to that.
Sounds good. Maybe this time we'll actually do it. All right. Here we go. When I'm out in the forest, I notice a lot of unnatural things just as I noticed the natural things. Not all natural streams have trash on the side of them. Not all natural streams have bubbles far away from where the stream gets frothy. When I noticed them, I asked myself, what does this mean for me? What might this mean for the world? And what else is present alongside the unnatural things that I noticed? How many more natural things can I notice? One of the things that's very important to also notice when you're in a stream is the current. How strong is it? Solid or the rock? Temperature is it outside? And what temperature is the water? And after you've assessed those things, you can move forward with caution. I noticed plants, not only because they're gorgeous, every single one of them, even the annoying invasive ones, but also because certain plants have what I need, like this dead nettle, the superfood, tasty snack. I forgot my gloves.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I'm up there to see you.
Oh, okay. There. I'm good. I tell you. Oh, thank you. I have a visitor. Sometimes things like this happen. I have a visitor, and I'm on a live broadcast with a resilient activist now, and it's awesome. So, what did you bring me?
I'm not real sure. Brought you this sax plant.
All right. Thank you.
This is what you wanted.
Yes. Excellent. Oh, that looks like some wild
And
ginger.
2 swing seats.
And 2 swing seats. That is excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'll see you on.
There.
Awesome. I'll see you on the flip side, okay? All right. Thank you. All right. I'm going to check out this side of this hill here. Sometimes we go on the trails. Sometimes I go just off the trails. This little umbrella plant is a
Mayapple.
mayapple. Yep. It's a good indicator where I can find some mushrooms.
I was wondering if you were hunting for some morels.
We have only found 3 out here.
I think the season is just beginning, really.
Yeah, for up here, yeah. Down in southern Missouri, it's been going for a little bit here. Here is sign of old friends having died together. Looks like probably Virginia creeper having taken down an old tree. And sometimes we grieve the trees that are brought down by invasives, but then we can also focus on the life that springs up. When they've been downed. Different variety of plants you can find where the dead things have fallen. grapevine. Also fallen. And now I'm going to try to descend this soppy hill without having also joined the fallen. And without stepping on things like that. It's such a wonderful thing to be able to look up when you're going exploring, but looking down is also very, very important.
Was that a cutleaf toothwort?
This looks like possibly poison ivy, frankly. The different shapes of the leaves.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
They're usually reddish when they first come out,
Yeah, I don't see the red along the stem.
and they're separate
Right
leaves.
there. Yep. The separate. Yep. I think you might be right. Excellent. And frankly, it's within the forest, so not the favorite spot for poison ivy. Doesn't get enough sun. Right. Gorgeous. Okay, I'm gonna hop on over to the trail. And hopefully, that looks like a mint. Does it taste like a mint? It smells like a mint. That is traditional. Just
Spearmint, maybe?
yeah, it tastes like spearmint. There's not even like I was thinking maybe a lemon mint of some sort. But yeah, it tastes like spearmint. How interesting. How interesting what washes down from people's gardens. Okay. Well, we're going to go past the evidence that this is actually a project and get back into nature. Beyond trails, that's the most ideal spot to bring your eyes upward. Sometimes you can even find a sit spot and let your eyes roam. See what you can hear. See what you can smell. Notice the feeling of the breeze on your cheeks. In your hair, how it moves everything around you.
Are those big trees primarily oaks, it looks like?
There's a lot of oak in this forest, yeah. Also, we have hackberry. Shagbark hickory.
Nice.
Sycamore. And we've been planting. Oh, here's another one of those really insistent plants. It likes to come up everywhere. The garlic mustard.
Yeah.
Tastes great in pesto. Not so good for greens. If you eat way, way, way too much of it, you can get a bit of too much arsenic in your system. We have some edible, looking beyond the grass, we have some edible, some more violets. Here's some stinging nettle. Growing in a nice patch here. And that, it's like spinach, it's like artichoke hearts. It's also an anti-inflammatory. Sometimes being in nature brings to mind all the things we've learned from other people. In the Ozarks, there are some beekeepers who they sell the services of their bees as arthritis practitioners. When their bees sting someone on the knuckle, that knuckle will have less problems with arthritis for the whole next year. Stinging nettle is the same way. It doesn't last as long, and it doesn't kill another creature. So I prefer that. This is an example of a time when I'm exploring here. I know this area, but not everyone who comes into our forest feels comfortable coming back away from the beaten path into spots where they can explore without being seen, because they know that also they can't see what is in there. These ferns like to crawl down the rock. And this stream is only active on those special days where we've had rain. Here's a curious thing. Is this a natural rock? Or was it manufactured? I try not to let the sound of my feet falling on the ground accompany the birds too much. I get to see more if they don't make noise.
Was that a fallen cottonwood?
Okay. I'm not quite sure what that was. Our guess was a white oak, but it might be a cottonwood. Let me investigate the bark a bit more. I see turkey tail.
Yeah. Self mushroom.
Whatever it was big.
Yeah. That's what made me think cottonwood.
Mm-hmm. Hi.
Did you get, there's Jack in the Pulpit up top there.
You want to show me?
Yeah, I figured. And I saw a toad
You did?
and a blue skink.
You saw a blue skink?
Uh-huh. Let's see if the toad's still around.
Guys, this is Eric. He likes to come every once in a while. He likes to come and bring us cool new plants and check out what's growing in the forest.
Somebody put a lot of work into that stairs.
They were all made by volunteers 2 years ago and last year.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. There's more work to be done, but it is very, very impressive. And that's the reason we coordinate volunteer events, because so much can be done when we work together. More evidence, this is actually a project. And more May apples.
Nice. They're blooming around here right now.
Are they? There's firs?
Ferns.
Oh, ferns. Oh, sweet. There they are. Oh,
And those are a little different than the other ones.
yeah, they're not.
They're not as dark green and
Yeah.
a little bigger.
It's beautiful. Lots of wild chives around here too. Put that in your pesto with your garlic mustard. Got my eyes peeled for, we are approaching that morel spot right now. Last year they were behind this tree. Yeah, last year they were right back here.
This is where the Jack in the Pulpit.
Oh, cool.
There's some that have a little over here.
Okay, I'm coming. I get distracted easily. There you guys are. Look at you.
Oh, there it is. Up, you can even see the space sticking in there.
Yeah. That's beautiful. So good to know. And I get distracted by these thinking they're morels, but they are not. They're gum trees.
Oh yeah,
Tree droppings.
sweet gum.
I'm like, oh look, oh no. Anything else interesting?
Dutchman bridges out of John C.
Oh, the Dutchman, they're seeding out. Oh, great. Should we collect them?
It's up to you.
Are they dry enough though? I don't know.
This one, yeah.
That one's dry.
And then just plant. Oh, they're not very black yet. But see, they have little white things, and the ants come and get them and move them around because of the little white things. But they'll be black when they're ripe.
All right. This is one of those nice spots that someday could be an outlook spot if we thin out just a little bit of that honeysuckle. A little bit more. All right. Well, Eric, I'm going to go on back and meander my way towards some mullein I saw.
Okay, I left the sunset seeds in there, and then there's more wild ginger for you to plant in a
Sweet.
bag hanging up. You'll
Excellent.
see it on little trees.
Awesome. I saw that. Yeah. Sweet. Thank you so much.
Okay, I will let you go first.
Okay. Alrighty.
Hey, Joy.
Yes.
I've been working with a Girl Scout camp in the middle of Lawrence,
Mhm.
and they have a honeysuckle issue too. And
Oh.
we came up with an interesting solution for it. Of course, it's a many lifelong pursuit, but we cut it and then we let it dry out. We burn it, and then when it's to the cold stage, we put out the fire, and you end up with biochar,
Sweet.
and it's just pure carbon basically, and it makes an excellent ground cover for your pathways. The problem with wood chips is that they hold water, but sometimes the biochar will wash away in a big gully washer type of thing, but it makes an excellent ground cover for pathways, especially in wet areas.
That is wonderful. We have a huge pile of honeysuckle down at the bottom, and we've been wanting to do a big old bonfire to celebrate when we come back.
Well, all you have to do is put it out when it is burned down to the coal stage. Then you got a bunch of biochar.
That is so excellent.
Ants. Carpenter ants, maybe?
Yeah, possibly. A lot of them around here. We'll put their home gently back down. All right. I'm going in the direction of a treacherous climb, but if I do it right, I won't have to. I believe that looks like lamb's quarters. Is it?
I don't see it.
It has, oh, sorry, has some of the characteristics.
Oh, yeah, it could be. Is it pretty soft leaves?
Huh? Yeah. Soft stems.
That's
little
very
fuzzy.
tasty. Those are very tasty.
Yeah. It's good for, that's good eatings. Here looks like a little young tree. Nice to see that that's actually happening.
Yeah.
And then here is a baby greenbrier.
Bristly greenbrier, huh?
Mm-hmm. And greenbrier is edible.
Really?
Mm-hmm. The young leaves are easy to eat. The
tendrils that attach it to a tree or something nearby. They are also very tender to eat. The leaves, when they get thicker, you've got to cook them so they can get tender again, unless you don't mind the texture, and you can chomp on it for a while. Tastes like green beans.
I'll have to try that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's some more. Let's see what I can see. Sure, it's the right kind of tree. Some more dead nettle.
Uh-huh.
Another one of my favorite snacks. Sadly, May apples are not really edible. They're actually the opposite of edible. Not good food. There's a lot of honeysuckle around here to take out.
Yeah. Like everywhere.
Uh-huh. Remember that rock with the holes? It is in there. Now, if I can do this without stepping on the moss, I'll be happy with myself.
So Joy, we're just almost at an hour in, and
Great.
I was just wondering, and I want you to go if you've got a particular spot. I know you mentioned the mullein. We haven't seen that yet, but
Yep.
I think it would be
Happy to
great.
hear.
I have a list of conversation topics that have come up since you've been talking, that if there's a spot where you can sit down, take a load off for a few minutes, and we can open it up for some conversation, that would be great too.
That is excellent. So every once in a while, you can find a spot where you feel just absolutely comfortable with sticking where you are. And Native Americans translated that into English and called them sit spots.
So
So
speak
I
out
found a
loud.
spot.
How are you deciding what's your sit spot right now? What's going through your mind as you choose it?
I'm looking for a spot that has a rock that's wide enough to fit my bottom. So has a nice view where I'm not going to see trash. I'm not going to see, anything that's too offensive. I'm out of view of anybody who's walking around the property. But also, I can see some flowers. There's something I really like about it. And then I can sit and check out what's moving around me. The movement of the water, the wind, the leaves. And just be aware. And so I'm going to be aware of you.
That was so
Let's get
delightful.
to those questions.
All right. Well, let's first, Brenda, you're on the call here. Do you have anything you would like to start off asking, commenting? You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like. No? All right. Wait a minute. I can't oops. There, you're unmuted. Sorry, were you saying something?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh, there you are. Okay, cool.
Yes. Okay. I have 2 plants in my yard that I think are the invasive honeysuckle that you're talking about. Can I show you? You can tell me if it is.
Sure.
One of them is this.
Let's see.
Can you even see that?
Well,
Here it is close up.
Keep talking, Brenda, so that
Yeah,
you
keep talking.
become
It makes it bigger.
primary in this.
Okay.
there we
I'm-
go.
I want them to look at these plants in my yard and tell me whether they're the invasive honeysuckle that we're talking about,
Okay.
because I don't know that much about.
No, that's not.
Yes,
No.
You see it?
I can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think the leaves are
Those
too
leaves are
small.
elongated.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can you show us the trunk?
hmm
Yes, no.
Show us what the trunk looks like.
And keep talking, Brenda. So
Can you not
that
see it?
your image is bigger.
Oh, get in close.
Getting close.
hmm
Might
Ah,
be.
Sure looks like it.
It
yeah.
is.
No, go up the trunk until you find the first group of leaves.
Yeah. Ooh, it might be a nicely pruned Big Mama. I'd have to see a clump of leaves first.
I have no idea. Sorry. This house was built in the late 30s, and it was here when we moved in, obviously. And I always assumed something that someone planted, but over the years, because of the way it keeps losing pieces of it, I'm in the spring. It has berries in the fall.
Red berries?
Red, yes.
Are they like in pairs along the
I don't remember. What do the flowers look like in the spring?
they're
Usually-
very fragrant? They're about ready to come out.
Yeah.
They're white with maybe some pinkish tinge.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
smell like,
it sounds
Okay.
like it. Very
That's-
fragrant.
yes.
So
Yeah.
here's the deal. Sometimes domesticated honeysuckle can be wonderfully enjoyed, kind of like mimosa. around
Yeah.
here. It
Yes.
can be a really attractive, appreciated plant in domestic situations. It is when the roots shoot outside of the boundaries of somebody's backyard and start expanding outside of the backyard that it becomes a problem.
And also for the honeysuckles, the birds love those berries, although they're not as nutritious as our native honeysuckle or other berries would be, but the birds eat a lot of them. And that's how the honeysuckle spreads.
Yeah.
Because the seed is obviously inside the berry and the birds drop that wherever they go.
Right.
So yeah, it's there's still nurseries that are selling it, even though
Yeah.
it is an invasive species. I will say that in Kansas, for example, while it's identified as a problem weed, it is not listed as an official invasive species because the dollar amount to eradicate it would be unsurmountable. And so the state doesn't want to impose that kind of restriction, if they actually label it as a noxious plant, then that would require every business, every homeowner, all along every railroad track along the entire state to have that eradicated, and it can't be done. And so it's just not listed, even though it meets all the definitions of being invasive. So
Okay.
absolutely, Brenda, if you've got the wherewithal to remove it, and there's actually on the Missouri Grow Native site, and I can give you some resources of plants to replace it with. That would be in a
Okay.
similar situation, and as everybody's beautiful, but not have that that invasive activity. So
Yes. Perfect.
It's
Thank you
also
both.
very
Is
brittle.
my- Yes.
It's very brittle, and so if it is tall enough, sometimes they can get quite tall. If it's tall enough to grow over your house, well, you know.
Yeah, it's out in the yard a bit, so that's not a danger, but it is beginning to look pretty bad, and knowing that it is not a good one to have around, I'm considering yanking it out, plus one other place where I see it growing in the yard. So thank you.
sure.
Mm.
All right.
I
So
can talk about
Go ahead.
I can talk about a method called root docking that doesn't require any herbicides or any, it's actually less disruptive to the plants that are around the honeysuckle to take it out when you're root docking.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a perfect example of one sitting right next to me, of course. And you can
convenient.
see yes. You can see that kind of shape of the bark right there. Underneath the honeysuckle, this is a really nice spot because you can see the crown. Each bush has a crown, and usually it is under the ground. But this one you can see it's above ground because we're on rocks. But when you're taking out the honeysuckle, leaning on it and then seeing where the roots that are spreading out along the surface of the ground, as you lean, they'll start to lift up. And that will tell you where to sever the roots with either a sharpshooter shovel or a pickaxe, though you'll dull your pickaxe if you do that too much. And leaning on it actually is a very effective way, especially when it's dormant and the sap isn't filling every inch of that plant. It's the easiest way to take a plant out, and you'll feel so accomplished when you've done it. And when they're dormant, at least, they're super light. So you've taken out this huge bush, but it may only be like 15 pounds. So it's a pretty gratifying exercise.
So should I do that in the fall then?
Either the late fall or probably February or March is the best time.
Okay. Do I have to worry about digging out any of the other existing roots that are there?
If you get the roots about 6 inches out from the crown of the plant, severed, and then all the way down underneath, there's probably a couple of tap roots, and you can get them severed down as well, just by twisting the plant after the surface roots are cut. You can also pull, once a root is cut, you can actually pull it out. If it's not well established, you can pull it out. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Perfect.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Joy. That was great. Ken, do you have anything to add to that on the honeysuckle in particular?
Boy, it's I think it must be partly climate related, because I know that my on the other side of the hill where my great grandparents lived, they had a honeysuckle stand of ornamentals, and it just sat there and sat there and sat there and sat there, and about 20-30 years ago it just started spreading, and I don't know why. I mean, part of it was that there were maybe more birds overwintering and they would eat and spread it, but I think that there's something else in the plant itself. It has become much more invasive than it used to be. So, you know, and I have something called a polar bear, which is like a big levered way to pull out the big shrubs. And I got to say, I've had some of the roots start growing on me that are left in the ground. But I like your approach of trying to get rid of it that way, for sure. It's a tough one. It's a really tough, you know, it's more of a spiritual practice that will last your whole life.
Yeah, mindfully removing honeysuckle. So I know that a lot of the restoration organizations in town, Parks and Rec and other organizations, will still use a chainsaw. They'll cut the trunk of the stem of the honeysuckle and apply Tordon or some similar chemical, and it's applied like a bingo dauber, right to just that one root. And I've heard some mixed commentary about whether, because that root that's left is absorbing that Tordon, and how that could be impacting the plants that intertwine the roots, and that the Tordon can leach out into the soil around it and impact other plants. So I've heard both sides of that issue, that yes, it's true, or no, that's an old wives' tale. And so I don't really have a solution, but I know as a master naturalist, it's a huge issue, and that a lot of the work and volunteer hours that our organization alone puts into it, a huge amount is eradicating the Japanese honeysuckle. So, and other invasives, but it's a huge issue right now. Yeah.
My experience when I remove the honeysuckle is that it increases things bounce back that were suppressed by the honeysuckle.
Yes.
So you get much more diversity. Even if you have to treat some of the stumps, you do get a bounce back in the diversity. So, you know, if you're not spraying, it's going to come back, and so you're going to have to come back in there. And I like the approach of just doing the cambium layer, so that you get minimal impact. And I have an open mind on different ways, different types of herbicides or minimal impact. Some people say that you can use vinegar and various things. I haven't had much luck with that myself.
We hadn't either.
But you know, I'm more than open to all alternatives when it comes to honeysuckle.
For the Tordon, the honeysuckle has a defense mechanism. When you've cut it off, like you lop a limb off, and then the honeysuckle will start sending up this goo that then hardens within 3 to 5 minutes. And then the Tordon, if it's applied after that 3 to 5 minutes, it will not work, and it will actually damage the rest of the environment around it, because it's not sucked down into the honeysuckle. But if you apply it immediately after you cut it, the honeysuckle actually seals off the Tordon itself. If you make sure that it's you just apply it on the end of the cut, not onto the outside.
Yeah, so the way that they typically do it is there'll be two people working together. One person's wearing gloves and holding the Tordon dauber, and the other person has the loppers. And so it's lop and dop, I think they say. Lop and dop, right? So that they're doing it right then and there. But the other issue, of course, is all the seeds that have fallen over the years. And so even if you are able to eradicate the more mature shrubs, there's many years worth of babies coming up. And so, and the babies pull up pretty easily. But yeah, it's a very interesting situation that we're in. And I think you're onto something, Ken, about some things with climate change and with just the health of the planet right now, at least in the Midwest area where it's so prevalent. So let's move on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. And Brenda, thank you for bringing that up, because as you can tell, it's a really important topic. And so these are my notes in the order of your meander, Joy, and I'll just let you answer them however, whatever kind of comes to mind. I noticed when you first started, when we actually really, you actually did start on the walk, which took us a little while. I just noticed that the pace of the tone of your voice slowed down. And I would just like to invite you for a moment to kind of express how that feels. What happens when there's that moment that you got the kids settled and you get out of the car and you're parked and you know what your plans are for the day and you step on the path, and then what? What happens viscerally for you at that point?
This was most noticeable for me when we would step out of the car and we're near running water. It's less sudden in just a forested environment, but you still get the effect after a while. But immediately on the banks of the Jacks Fork River in southern Missouri, when we stepped onto the banks, I felt my fingers tingle. And they were tingling with the same feeling that happens when all over your body, something really scary has happened. And all of a sudden you're on alert. Well, that feeling was only in the tips of my fingers, and it seemed to be just dripping off of my fingers. I had to actually look at them to see what was happening physically because the feeling was so real. And the result, either from that dramatic experience or from an hour spent in a forest, it's almost chemical. You feel an all-over whole body calm. And it slows everything down. It makes you feel like only the very, very, very important things are worth your worry. And that is life and creation, family, connections, and everything else falls away.
Thank you. One of our board members, Meredith Evans McAllister, at our very first board meeting, when she came on the board, we were just going around and everyone saying what their favorite place in nature was, favorite time and place in nature. And she said her favorite time in nature is when she is 10 steps onto the path. Because that's when she can let that all go. She gets to that moment where, and whether it's that sense of the negativity, toxicity flowing out through your fingertips, as you kind of were talking about, or just that really giving yourself up into that place. So, yeah, that reminded me of that. Okay. I thoroughly love the sound of your footsteps and the water in the video. And I know we talked earlier this morning about how people can record their own nature walks and that kind of thing. And I think that because the sounds are going to be part of your experience, the sound of that guy's lawnmower or that truck on the highway, right? Or a plane going overhead, or even if it's your own footsteps, your own breath, your own as you get to the top of a hill. I don't know. I just kind of liked it. And I'm just going to interject, Ken or Brenda, if either of you have anything to add too, just kind of wave your hands and I'll quit talking. But That's how I felt about the sound.
Wonderful.
You should not have asked for my comments first because I jumped off into the whole, how are we going to fix this problem? Yeah, I loved the
Who
sound
you
of
are,
it.
Brenda. It's what you do best. It's not a problem.
You know
Anyway.
what? When I was down near the Blue River, the headwaters of the Blue River, down at Camp Creek, at the Camp Branch Creek, yeah, or the Camp Branch, yes, of the Blue River, yeah. The first time visiting the banks of that spot right there, I saw it had just rained and there was a lot of runoff from all sorts of stuff, and it was cloudy, muddy water. And I thought, oh, how sad, how sad. And then after a while, I stopped talking about or thinking about what was sad about it and started just letting go of my thoughts and asking nature, what am I learning from this? And the thought crossed my mind, how many particles of soil are passing by me at such a fast pace that I'm missing the beauty of every single one of them. And I thought, why would that thought cross my mind? Why is that important? And I thought about how many people live in an urban area. In the next moment, this thought crossed my mind. There are so many people living in an urban area that whiz by on highways, and we miss that connection and we miss them. But at some point, the river settles down and the pieces of soil connect to each other again. And I had to take faith at that point that at some point we will settle down. We will be able to connect better again. It's just a matter of time.
Love that metaphor.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other comments there before I move on? Okay.
It's great. Yeah, I agree. Sound of water is very healing, very powerful.
And also the metaphors. The metaphors are astounding when we really put our hearts and mind into noticing them. Yeah. Okay, the next thing you mentioned was the dead nettle, and you said it's just what you need, and it's one of your favorite foods. So what did you mean by it's just what you need?
Dead nettle is one of those foods like purslane or kale that is really just chock full of all sorts of nutrients. You can see it in the different colors in each leaf. If you look close at it, there's purple next to red, next to green and blue, just all right next to each other. And it's such a dark color. And thankfully it's edible because all of the benefit of those building blocks, those nutrients, can be brought into your body and put to use beneficially inside of your body.
Cool. All right. Ken, Brenda, anything on that?
I think that's true with a whole lot of spring wild or things that come up in the spring. They're just full of energy that they're tonics, you know.
Yeah, we just don't know about them anymore. Okay. The next thing was, I just wanted you to really spend more time on the May apples, but since they weren't in bloom, you couldn't really see them. We should have done that over at Ken's place.
Yeah.
I just want to say a close friend brought me a bucket of May apples to plant in my yard. We only lived here about 1.5 years, and it's pretty suburban lawn. And so I had put in a little baby sycamore last year and another, great native tree in the front yard. And so going through in my mind's eye, this is a really formal looking kind of neighborhood. What am I going to bring in, and how am I going to enhance the great double layer of boxwoods right all along the driveway? And so I have this little circle of May apples around this little bitty sycamore because they like the shade, and they're both underneath a great big old oak tree, and they just look like fairy circles. So when those leaves come up, so anybody that's watching this, that's not familiar with May-apples, go find them. And it's when they're mature, the leaves are like as big as your whole hand, and they lay flat, and the stem comes underneath, and the blossoms underneath, and then the fruits underneath, and it looks like a little fairy island there. So that's all. I just want to say that. So
I
if
was looking
anyone,
around to see if I could find one.
The mayapple, when it first comes up, it's like a closed umbrella. I don't know if you've seen it
Mhm.
come up. The leaves all wrapped around the main stem, and then they unfurl after that. And it's just amazing. And the only ones that bloom are the ones with two leaves. So if you see a single, you don't even have to look. But if you look for the individual plant that has two leaves going both ways out, that's the one that has the blossom coming out in the fork between the two leaves coming out there. That's where the blossom comes out.
oh, I love that piece of information. Now I have to talk to my friend and make sure she knew which ones to dig up for me. You were walking past a dead tree, and I know when you and I were out there a couple months ago, Joy, and we're talking about what today's recording might look like. Can you talk a little bit more about? You made a comment about how much life comes from a down tree and from a dead tree, and we saw the turkey tail mushrooms and the little ferns coming in and some mosses, but I'd like to hear more from your perspective on what comes out of the dead.
Perfect, because there's a really great example right here. I'm going to talk now, if you don't mind. There is a place with a really just absolutely downed tree, and you can see what
Slow
is
down
coming
on
up around it.
Joy, slow down on your camera movement a little bit if you can.
Got it. Let's see. So this is a dead tree. It's in two places. It looks like there's also, look at the size of that one.
We're losing your video, or you're losing your audio a little bit.
Okay, I'm going to come out of there. I'm thinking maybe that was getting in the way of my signal.
Okay.
Did you get to see that worm?
No.
No.
Oh, well, it was huge. There's so much life that is in these trees, even just growing out of them. And you can see how soft. This is not a tree anymore. This is dirt.
Yep.
And it contains so many creatures that are turning it into further nutritious, lovely stuff that other plants can eat. I'm going to find another sit spot.
Uh-huh.
And speak a little bit more about that. There are certain animals that we don't think about very often. They shape our world, as you can see with the patterns on this log. Bugs and animals that we don't think about shape our world, and we don't even know about it. So when you're in the forest, it gives you a chance for pause to recognize the rest of life that you're not always looking at.
So Ken or Brenda, do you have any thoughts on why you should leave dead things out in your yard?
I'm a bad person to ask because I like everything to look tidy. So I have a hard time with leaving things in place if they're not vigorous, you know. But speaking about the fallen trees, one of the things that impressed me most and stays with me the most about Muir Woods is the trees that had gone down and the way that the trees regenerated themselves from the ones that had gone down. They were fascinating. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know much about this stuff, so I'm just learning from you, really.
But Brenda, you asked such
But Muir Woods was amazing.
yeah, and
Thank you.
you raised such an important question, an important point that many of us like a clean, neat, tidy yard, right? We really like that we can feel safe, that there's not going to be snakes, or, you know, that there's, that we can see if someone's out there, that the branches aren't going to fall on our house, especially dead branches, right? Or fall on our car. And so, but there's a lot of things that we can do and have a win-win situation. So for example, if you have a dead tree or you have some branches that are dead and you want to remove them for safety reasons, instead of taking that branch and just shipping it off to the landfill or even a compost facility, it's really nice to put that somewhere in your yard, because someone's going to appreciate that. Someone's going to make a home out of it or find a place to raise their young, right? So even if it becomes backdrop in a garden, if it's a really messy spot, like you've done, maybe after you clean up this honeysuckle in your yard, you've got all these twigs and branches, you can even put up like a privacy screen and put that brush behind it so that you still have that clean look, but you've got brush, and then you can put yard cleanup, garden cleanup all year in that pile. And that creates habitat for all kinds of critters, creates great soil quality underneath there, and yet you still have that clean, not necessarily manicured, but you can meet both needs, is what I'm saying. So anyway.
Right.
Yeah, that's
I feel
where your
challenged.
came from.
Awesome.
What were you saying, Ken?
That's where the soil came from in the first place. It's
Yeah.
in your yard. It's come from dead trees and grasses. And, and I mean, that was a great illustration of a log that literally is turning into dirt. And that's where it comes from. And that's, it's a gift. And, my sense is if you can't tolerate a pile of brush, then you can create a small brush pile to burn and then put it out at the coal stage to make biochar and move that into your soil, because that becomes a carbon sink. It holds the carbon for centuries in the carbon, and it also creates a bacterial apartment complex for your soil that you can mix into your dirt and improve the soil. But I personally prefer to just, like all the leaves, just put them in a big pile in the back, and then create another pile in a couple of years, and that first pile will, by that time, be good enough for scattering around in your garden and flower beds and whatnot to improve the soil. You can do that with sticks too. Just put them in the bottom of your compost pile, which I presume everybody has.
Yes.
Great, great impetus to start that. I want to add one more thing about the dead trees and dead logs. When we moved into this neighborhood, suburban South Kansas City, Missouri, the back of our property is a meditation center, and they have quite a bit of property there, and they left a big stand of trees. And otherwise, around the entire property, and probably 5 miles in every direction, is manicured lawns, right? It's home sites, manicured lawns, typical suburban neighborhood. And when we moved here, we began to notice how many more woodpeckers we were seeing. In fact, we have in our yard, we've seen flickers, we've seen red-bellied woodpeckers, we have downies, we have harries. And I know that it's because of these trees that have some dead snags in them, dead branches, because that's what they need for breeding. They lay their eggs inside the holes of dead branches. and dead trunks. And so if we remove those, they don't have any place to lay their eggs. So that are, and raise their young. So that's another reason, is it's not just habitat of pollinators and habitat of, you know, soil quality and that kind of thing, and overwintering for whatever critters are in your yard. There's this whole cycle of reuse of that tree before it goes to the landfill. You know, the whole reduce, reuse, recycle, like it works out in nature too. So anyway, I just want to add that. Okay, the next one, Joy, this is for you, but are you in okay space?
There was a mouse nearby.
And how did you do with
Go
that?
ahead. It's great. It's so cute. It didn't run my direction.
All right. So the next thing I want to talk about, we still have about 25 minutes, is I know that Clement Waters and you have been in connection with the Forest Therapy organization. And I'd like to hear you talk about forest therapy and kind of what you've experienced, what your plans are for Clement Waters and the forest therapy.
Excellent. I think we're having a bit of connection issue in this particular spot right here. I absolutely blame the mullein plant that I'm about to tell you, but I'm going to go down the hill in just a second so I can talk about forest therapy.
Okay, show us the mullein plant first.
Okay, and then we're going to leave this spot because it's just not connecting very well. This is mullein. It is so thick. It almost is like felt.
Put your camera down a little bit.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it's so fuzzy. It really does feel like felt you would get from the fabric store. And I'm going to walk down the hill while I talk about this because this is obviously not a good spot. But you talk about destruction leading way to better things. Mullein only grows where the ground has been disturbed. And we wouldn't have that gift if we humans didn't have this kind of habit of changing what's around us. Mullein is helpful in native societies for fishing, but they also use it to like baby wipes, as bandages. I mean, so many things. All right, I'm going to walk down the hill here, and let me talk about forest therapy while I'm doing it, if that's okay, so we don't waste time. Okay. Forest therapy is basically an immersive experience where you are in nature and you feel like you're far away from things you would worry about, and you experience this sense of being able to have safety, but being able to notice things around you. And just as we talked about happens when you're on the side of a river, it happens gradually to you when you're in a forest. So finding another sit spot right now. So forest therapy guides will show you where, oh, are you there? There you go. They'll show you where to be. They'll guide the experience. They'll show you a safe place to sit where you can observe what's around you. But that is the extent of their guiding. They back out of it because honestly, the forest is your therapist. So the responsibility of the forest therapy program is a safe spot that feels immersive, like you're in nature, and you're safe. And when I say safe a million times, that's such a huge part of it. And then they back off. And then at the end of about a 20 or 30 minute period, there'll be a regroup session. People sit in a circle and reflect what they noticed. And sometimes what people notice has nothing to do with the forest. What they notice might be that is absolutely monumental from their own experience, from their own past. They've come to some sort of epiphany moment that they needed to come to and hadn't done until they felt safe in a natural environment. So forest therapy facilitates those kinds of moments, but it also facilitates a calming. So whether the person has this monumental epiphany or whether the person who's undergoing forest therapy achieves a sense of calm that allows them to be more prepared in facing the next day, that is beneficial. So that's the point.
And so talk, if you can, for just a minute about who are forest therapists, who gets trained and what's the training like and that kind of thing.
Okay. There actually are many different agencies that train people to be forest therapy guides. We are working with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides and Programs. That's a mouthful and an acronym like that confuses me, but it's a organization that has been featured on National Public Radio and is kind of globally training people to become forest therapy guides. What it looks like is a week-long intensive. It's usually in a retreat environment. So we have a training that was going to happen in May. It's been rescheduled to middle of July. That's going to happen at the Blue River Forest Nature Sanctuary in Southern Overland Park. That's where our organization is going to be sending some people to train to become forest therapy guides. But the rest of that organization's offerings are global. So you could go to Switzerland to a resort out there. If you can afford to go, it's totally amazing and worth it. And you can go and have an intensive week where you learn how to notice what's around you, forest, and what's around you or less that nature brings to you, so that you can be kind of a sounding board for nature, like a liaison or an interpreter for humans that have been away from nature and are missing it.
That's fantastic, Joy. I just want to say you're in an area where you're not getting very good bandwidth. So can I ask you to move uphill a little bit while I give a nice plug to the Blue River Forest Experience? So Kelly Daniels is another local amazing naturalist, and she has some beautiful property out near the Arboretum in Southern Overland Park. Her Blue River Forest Experience, they have all kinds of children's programming, after school programming, and a lot of adult programs. She does women's circles, and it's really glorious. And so I highly recommend connecting with her if you're out at the south end of town. She's going to be hosting the forest therapy training this summer. So I don't know if what the dates are, if they're being adjusted and aligned because of everything else happening in the world. But this is a really big deal for them to come to Kansas City and offer this training. So share that information with anybody that you know. Anybody, Ken or Brenda, anything else on that you?
I was going to ask if you would include that information on the email that you're going to, thank you.
I will, yeah.
And this is the same as the Shinrin Roku training forest bathing? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's just a particular organization that's taken the Shinrin-yoku training, which is a Japanese word meaning forest therapy. So in
Forest bathing.
Forest bathing. They actually, they contract, or they work in hospitals and take people in an ambulance with their hospital beds and IVs and that kind of thing, and just go immerse these patients in the forest just for a part of their healing. So it's really fantastic concept. All right. I would like to know if there's, first of all, I'm going to have to post a better picture of Jack in the Pulpit because I don't think we could see the one you saw very well.
I
But
saw.
could you see it pretty well, Ken? I
Yeah,
would
he's a little
hear
sticking
either.
up there, with the little cover.
I saw it for a minute and then my screen shifted. So that's the problem
I
on
didn't
the
see it.
recording here. Because of the way my screen was, it didn't stay on the recording. So,
Okay.
but are there any interesting things to know about Jack in the Pulpit? So either Joy or Ken, if you've got some insight about that.
Well, Ken, do you want to go first? And if you say what I was going to say, I'll say good for you.
You know, Jack in the Pulpit is just always such a treat to find in the woods because, you know, it's an interesting looking plant, and it, you know, with a little covered pulpits, it fits the name perfectly. And also in the fall, it has beautiful red berries that are just as spectacular as the springtime, I think. And so both of those are really neat. And it's got some interesting botany too, but I'll let you talk.
Well, the only thing of note that I thought of when I saw it is it's Missouri's native pitcher plant. So it's one of those carnivorous plants that likes to attract bugs to come in and fall on the into the flower, and then the bugs can't crawl out because of the stuff they've fallen into, and the sides of the pitcher plant flower, that Jack in the Pulpit flower, are so slippery. So the Jack in the Pulpit gets a nice snack, I believe. Now that's what my husband told me. So.
Well, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. Joy, go ahead.
I actually had a Jack in the Pulpit growing in my yard for many, many years. I
Cool.
bought the plant from a grower around here that does some native plants, and just picked it up at a farmer's market. And I don't know, it died after a while, but for years it came up, and it was the most fascinating, the most interesting plant. I was trying to see if I still have a picture of it somewhere. I can't find it, but anyway, I loved it.
That's so cool. Yeah, because it's very unique. Yeah, that's great. You know, I never really thought about getting one just from a nursery. So that's kind of cool. Thanks, Brenda.
I think it was from Vinland.
Oh, cool.
neat.
Vinland Valley, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it south of Lawrence, where I forget where
Yeah.
they are?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Okay, so the next
And
question.
they almost always the farmers. So
Nice.
Miss Joy, on your property, you had some construction going on, and I saw a row of something that I couldn't tell if they were potted plants or they were tree stumps, and then there was the shed, and then looked like some pallets. And what's happening? What are you doing there? What's going on?
Well, the row of tree stumps is the border of an area where a yoga teacher likes to come and teach yoga. So that's what they're for. The shed is where we keep volunteer tools. And then we do have trees that are planted in pots. We got them last year from Missouri Department of Conservation. And we planted as many as we could last spring, but there was still some left over. So we put them into big 10-gallon pots, and they have become better, healthier trees. And now we can put them into the ground in holes.
So how many varieties of trees and shrubs or whatever are you trying to bring in? Do you have a thought about that?
Well, you know, natural plantings will have thousands of varieties of plants around each other. We went for as many varieties of understory riparian trees as we could we tried to focus on natives. There are some tree varieties that the Department of Conservation had that were not natives, but we got them anyway. We got a greater variety of trees than we really ordered. We ordered 450 and we got 850 because of a mix-up. And so we returned some, as many as we could, to the Department of Conservation for an event they had last Thursday. And we only have a few left over that actually were viable and grew fine. I believe it was something like 60 to 80 varieties of trees that we ended up with.
Wow.
Cool. And I know you have something happening with a greenhouse there, so we can talk about that project a little bit.
Yes. In the Ozarks, one of our founding members was a woman who designed her own house to be completely off-grid, to collect rainwater so that she could drink it, to generate its own electricity, and to keep itself warm in winter and cool in the summer. She made what's called an earth dip, and it was huge. Our aim with this greenhouse is to demonstrate the systems that she put into her home and help people like engineers and real estate developers see that these kinds of things can work. We're not suggesting that all new construction in Kansas City needs to have rainwater collection for drinkable water, or a combination of wind and solar to go into a battery system. But we are suggesting that rural communities would benefit from more of these kinds of resources, and especially third world and extreme rural areas in the United States that don't have access to construction supplies or utilities that at a cost they can afford. It could be amazing for them. So we're building a greenhouse tool shed that will be not really a house for us, but it'll allow us to test those systems that can be used in other structures. And we're cooperating with Engineers Without Borders of Kansas City to do that.
Great.
What's
And
the
you've had
woman's
a
name
number-
that you worked with?
Her name was Mary Severin.
I don't know her.
She passed away in November of 2017 or 2018. So yeah, this project is in memory of her.
Neat.
Yeah.
And you had last year, I think it was, so the Engineers Without Borders, wasn't there a group of kids that worked over the summer or something working on that? And how did that work out?
Youth Volunteer Corps came out and they provided 15 different kids ages 11 to 17, and it was heavy on the 11. And the kids were amazing at showing us exactly what in the third world simulation build, what would be possible and what is just not feasible. So for instance, we got to make the decision through hearing feedback from the kids that concrete is not always the best solution for creating a foundation. The kids actually enjoyed finding large boulders throughout the forest and team lifting them into place on a prepared floor, and then using cob as basically mortar put in between them. So that was amazing. Amazing to see what the kids could do.
And the reason for not wanting concrete was?
Oh,
Am I remembering?
we had zero electricity to the site, and so we had to rent equipment to mix the concrete. the equipment broke down. We had to mix it by hand in wheelbarrows. After everything was poured, the concrete had to be rinsed out of the rented material, the rented equipment, and out of the wheelbarrows. And of course, there's no water to the property either. So we had to bring them down to our creek and rinse them out in the creek, which was distressing to me. But even more distressing was the thought that I would be charged $450 extra if I brought the stuff back with concrete in it. And we experienced this kind of conflict of environmental ethics in that moment. And we thought, okay, this isn't worth it. And I was ready to just throw in the towel when my friends like Susan Jones, she lives in between Lawrence and Topeka, and she built her own house. Like all of these people who have done it before, they said, reach into your knowledge, your store of knowledge, your instinctual knowledge, and do what you know is going to work, that you don't need concrete. And that got me started down the path of the natural floor, which I already knew about. I wanted to make the project work and legitimate. And sometimes new ways are not legitimate.
You know, I can attest to that as the founder of a nonprofit, that getting ready to file my Form 990 this year. And the question it asks is, list your most important projects over the past year based on the amount of money, based on their expense, their dollar amount expense. So
oh, wow.
How much did it cost you to have kids move rock versus how much did it cost you to have that cement? And so there's this perception in our minds of value, right? There's the financial value, and there's a true value that shouldn't come into the value of what you have to offer, right? So there's this whole, anyway, I digress. Okay, thank you.
No, exactly.
Those were my questions. I think you pretty much answered them. I think with Brenda's insight and questions and some of Ken's input, it's been fantastic. We have about 4 more minutes, and I just would like to open this up to anything else that any of you has that you'd like to kind of end with, or wait, I have one more thing to say. We are asking for donations for this presentation and the earlier one that Ken did on finding your way in nature and getting yourself out there and really documenting it and knowing your place. We're asking for donations to clementwaters.org. If you're in a position where you're in a comfortable financial position and you can help support their mission. I choke up. I'm done. Stock.
So if people want to come and check you out sometime, how do they do that?
On clementwaters.org, we have an events page, and if you want to bring your inner circle of trusted people, and no more than 6 people, given what's going on right now, if you want to bring your inner circle of people, including kids, bring your own gloves, bring your own shovels to plant trees. We will open up the gate for you and orient you to this land from 15 full feet away and then allow you to enjoy the land after volunteering for a little bit and meander and roam. This is connected to Lakeside Nature Center's trail system. There's lots of enjoyment to be had. You can bring a picnic. You basically have full reign for 4 hours. You can volunteer some of that, and then you have full reign, our thank you to you for doing your part. Obviously, there's lots of trash to pick up. But there's lots to do, and volunteer groups don't realize that in small amounts of effort every single week, you can get so much done, and it makes such a huge impact, provides so much healing to everybody who comes by. So come sign up for a volunteer event. You're going to have to organize the group of people you're going to bring, but if you can figure out when you want to come, we will support you in coming and enjoying nature and doing something for the planet.
Fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wow. Ken, anything else that you want to add?
No, I think we should all go outside and spend as much time as we can this beautiful spring. It's a safe thing to do for people who are facing, the consequences of the pandemic, and it's a really good thing to do. And thanks for sharing your place, Joy, with us. It was a treat.
It's a pleasure
Yes.
for me to do it as well.
This
Yes.
was fantastic. So I'll be in touch when we've got the videos loaded and a way to get to them, and the list of that's like this long of all
Right.
the different sources and resources. So it's not going to happen by tomorrow, but we'll get it up as soon as possible. And I'm deeply grateful, Joy, to you for your time, your expertise, and your heart. And also to Ken. I mean, the two of you. So Ken Lastman, I don't know. I'm delighted that we've connected, the three of us, and all of those of you. Brenda, I know you've been a part of the Resilient Activist. I don't think you've missed a climate conversations event for many months. So great. All
They're
right.
important. I'm glad to know we can still buy Ken's book, because I went to Raven months and months ago and said, where can I get this book? And they're like, we don't know, it's out of print. So I'm super happy to find out that it's still available. I will be ordering one.
Right. All right.
That's great. And Ken's website will be on the resource list too. So that's
Perfect.
great. Well, thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
Sammy. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Ken.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
All
See
right.
you guys.
Bye.
Have a great springtime.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.